Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. When Gavin Maddox came home expecting a quiet evening by the pool, he found 40,000 gallons of water gone and a war brewing. What began as a bizarre HOA intrusion spiraled into a high-stakes battle of lies, power, and one man's refusal to back down. This wasn't about water, it was about control. I came home around 7 in the evening, carrying a 5-gallon bucket of pool sealant in one hand and a sandwich I hadn't had time to eat in the other. The sun was already dipping behind the hills, throwing long shadows across the property, and the air smelled like summer, chlorine, dry pine, and the faint trace of burnt rubber from someone's ATV up the road. It was supposed to be a quiet night. Just me, a patch of missing tiles near the shallow end, and a couple hours of solitary, satisfying labor. Instead, I stepped into something that felt off from the second my boots hit the backyard. There was water pooled in places it shouldn't have been. Small, glinting puddles near the base of the fence, the kind you'd only get if something had recently spilled or drained. The concrete pavers around the pool were drying in strange streaks, and the water line looked wrong, too low. I dropped the bucket, knelt beside the edge, and ran my hand along the tile, cold, but far below the usual level. I walked the perimeter twice, then checked the pump. Dry. The main drainage valve was wide open. The lock that was supposed to hold it shut was hanging off the pipe, snapped clean at the clasp. I stared at it for a long moment, too calm to call it shock, and too sharp to be confusion. I've seen break-ins before, seen sloppiness too, but this wasn't kids messing around. This was deliberate, methodical. Someone came in knowing what they wanted to do. At first, I thought maybe it was a leak. That would have been the best-case scenario, but the lock told a different story. And so did the wet boot prints, which led from the back gate to the control box and then back out again. I went inside, checked the system logs from the security cameras. The front and side entrances had nothing. But the gate facing the road that curved into Harbor Bluffs, that one had a visitor, or 3. I fast-forwarded through the day, watching shadow shift, light bounce off the trees. And then, at precisely 12:36 p.m., the feed caught them. 2 men in neon HOA vests, the kind you only wear when you're either pretending to be important or actually are, and a woman wearing a white visor and a smug little stride I could smell through the screen. They cut the lock on the side gate, walked in like it was a public park. One of them carried a clipboard. The woman walked straight to the pool, pointed at the deep end, then at the pump box. 30 seconds later, one of the men knelt down and opened the drainage valve. Another minute, and water began gurgling away beneath my backyard while she took photos like she was compiling a real estate brochure. They left without so much as a note. Until the next day. That's when the letter came, taped to my mailbox like a parking citation, inside an unsealed envelope marked with a cheap HOA logo. Harbor Bluffs Homeowners Association, compliance action required. The paper was stiff, printed with legal jargon I knew better than to take at face value. It accused me of violating local water ordinances, failing to register a non-compliant recreational water structure, and demanded I cease operation of the facility and take steps to dismantle or cover the structure until formal inspection is completed by the HOA Water Resource Oversight Committee. Apparently, I was now subject to fines. Daily penalties to be determined. No signature, just a typed name. Karen B., HOA President. My property isn't in an HOA. I bought this place 2 years ago, knowing full well it sat just outside their jurisdiction. I have the deed. I have the map. The house was built in 1973, decades before Harbor Bluffs was even a glimmer in a developer's cocaine-fueled dream, but now, someone had decided I was on the wrong side of a line I never agreed to cross. I spent the rest of the evening walking the fence line, making sure nothing else had been tampered with. Checked the camera wiring, too. All intact. No blind spots. Whoever did this came with confidence, probably assumed I'd just shut up and fall in line, that I'd shrug and refill the pool like some complacent retiree with more money than spine. They didn't know me. Not yet. I used to hunt people like this for a living. Bureaucrats who thought rules were optional. HOA presidents with God complexes and too much time. Crooked consultants who faked environmental violations to push people off their land. And while I retired to get away from that kind of fight, apparently it just followed me home. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on the back porch, sipping bourbon and watching the red light on the security camera blink like a heartbeat. The pool lay empty beneath the moonlight, a dry wound in the middle of my backyard. Tomorrow, I'd start making calls. But tonight, I took notes. The next morning, I was already on my second coffee by the time I called the number listed on the notice. It rang 4 times before a voice answered, clipped, calculated, and already annoyed, as if I was interrupting her from writing up a new list of citations for wind chimes being too melodic. This is Karen B., president of the Harbor Bluffs HOA. May I ask what this is regarding? This is Gavin Maddox, I said evenly. I live at 102 Lakeview Road. I received a notice yesterday about my pool. There was a pause, short but charged. Ah, yes, Mr. Maddox. We've been expecting your call. Have you? I took a sip just to keep my voice steady. Want to explain why someone drained 40,000 gallons of water off my property without notice? Or why 3 people broke in through a locked gate in the middle of the day? You'll want to be careful with your language, she said, feigning politeness like she was seasoning a stew with arsenic. No one broke in. We acted in accordance with the Water Safety Cooperative Law. Your structure was flagged as an at-risk volume for environmental seepage. You are, by definition, within our region's perimeter of water sensitivity, and as such, I cut her off. My property is not within your HOA. That's a matter of some debate, she said. While your deed predates our founding, the Regional Development Initiative has redrawn cooperative boundaries for the purposes of water safety management. Your pool is now part of a shared zone under the Canyon Lake Basin Initiative. You should have received a packet last year. I didn't. Well, that's unfortunate, but moving forward, you'll need to understand that your pool poses a liability, not just for you, but for the surrounding community. We've already submitted preliminary documentation to the EPA and the California Drainage Board. Submitted what exactly? I asked, already opening a new tab to search for that initiative. You filed an environmental complaint? Preliminary notice of concern, she said breezily. Until their review is complete, we're authorized to take precautionary actions. Authorized by whom? She exhaled like I was a child asking too many questions. By the Cooperative Framework Agreement filed last May. If you attempt to obstruct ongoing inspections or restore illegal water levels, you may be interfering with a federal review process. I trust you wouldn't want to do that. There was a long, tight silence. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because I'd heard this script before. It was the same crap repackaged in HOA stationery. Make it sound technical, add an acronym or two, threaten vague legal peril, and hope the target folds. Karen, I said, low and measured. I want the names of the individuals who entered my property. I want a copy of every document you filed on my behalf. And I want confirmation today that you will not step foot or send anyone else within 10 feet of my gate again. You're not in a position to make demands, she said, her tone now pure granite. The time of isolated private property is over, Mr. Maddox. You can fight the tide if you want, but you'll just drown alone. I hung up. No point in sparring with someone who thought she'd just declared eminent domain by phone. Instead, I spent the next few hours doing what I do best, pulling threads. I searched for the Canyon Lake Basin Initiative. Turns out it was a county-level framework created after the last drought to encourage voluntary conservation in new developments. Voluntary. The key word. There was no legislation, no mandates. Just fluff wrapped in fear, signed by half a dozen people with titles and no actual enforcement power. Then I looked up the Water Safety Cooperative Law she mentioned. That was a real thing, buried deep in a 1994 California statute about municipal water management. But its authority ended at the boundaries of actual public utility easements, which my land was not part of. Not even close. I pulled my deed, pulled the GIS maps, and overlaid them on the current HOA zone. Clear as day, their reach stopped across the road. I printed everything. I even highlighted the fence line and wrote, "Not your damn property" in red Sharpie just to amuse myself. That evening, I got another surprise. An envelope, hand-delivered, not from the HOA, from the EPA. Inside was a form letter. Not a warning, not a violation, just an acknowledgement. This is to confirm receipt of citizen complaint, Auger CLB 772. That's it. Someone had tried to make it federal. I set the letter down, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled through my teeth. They weren't bluffing about reaching out to Washington. The only problem was they were using lies to do it. This wasn't about water. It wasn't even about compliance. This was about control, and someone had just tried to make it a federal matter. Fine, let's play federal. The next morning, I was standing in the reception area of the Riverside County Land Use Office with a folder under one arm and a mug of gas station coffee in the other. The place smelled like ink toner and carpet glue, and the guy behind the counter had the expression of someone who'd spent 15 years too long telling angry retirees their fence permits were incomplete. I introduced myself, showed my ID, and explained what I needed: parcel history, zoning boundaries, and any annexation or district initiatives involving Harbor Bluffs. He gave me the look, that bureaucratic sigh that says, "This will take a while." But then I slid across the letter from the HOA, along with the EPA confirmation I'd received the day before. His eyebrows rose slightly. "Gonna need a supervisor," he muttered, disappearing through the back. 10 minutes later, a woman in business casual and glasses that looked welded to her face emerged with a tablet and a neutral tone. Her name was Sandra, and as it turned out, she'd seen the HOA's name pop up more than once lately. "Harbor Bluffs has been getting creative," she said carefully, pulling up a map on her screen. "But here's the official district boundary. See this line here?" She traced a red border that wrapped neatly around the subdivision like a ribbon. "Now, here's your property. Lot number 102. Completely outside. You're not within any HOA-acknowledged overlay. Not zoned for compliance. No easement, no annexation, not even an MOU on file." I nodded. "So, the Cooperative Water Zone Initiative only applies to lots within the district. Voluntary participation only." She tapped. "And the county has no enforcement mechanism connected to that program. They're just trying to look proactive during drought years." I asked if I could get a copy of the parcel overlay and HOA boundaries in print. She nodded and printed me a set. 4 pages, official seals, time-stamped, gold. "Anything else?" she asked. "Meeting minutes," I said. She blinked. "Excuse me." "Public records. If Harbor Bluffs filed anything with the county, there'd be a paper trail, proposals, requests, compliance expansions, land use adjustments, anything involving Lot 102. She pursed her lips but didn't argue. 15 minutes later, I was in a side room with a cardboard box of public filings and a lukewarm coffee refill, flipping through copies of HOA correspondence like I was building a case, which I was. And then I found it. A scanned packet from 6 months ago. Subject line: Temporary Expansion of Water Oversight Jurisdiction Pilot Initiative. Inside was a typed motion dated and signed by 6 board members of Harbor Bluffs HOA. They had unilaterally voted to temporarily include adjacent properties of environmental concern, citing proximity to the shared water basin and suspected violations. The language was vague, conveniently vague, but one line stood out. This provisional designation shall be applied to properties adjacent to Lakeview Road, including but not limited to Lot 102, currently held by a Mr. Gavin Maddox. My name, on a HOA internal motion. I never received notice, never signed anything, never agreed to participate, and yet they'd voted to rope me in like I was livestock that wandered too close to their property line. There was more, a printed email chain. Karen Bates writing to someone at the county's Water Resources Office. Subject: Concerns re private pool, unregulated water consumption. In the thread, she wrote, "Owner appears non-compliant, occupies sensitive basin proximity. Suggest we apply pressure via environmental review, even if symbolic. Name, Maddox Gavin. May require escalation. May require escalation." I took copies of everything: the motion, the emails, the maps. I even took a selfie holding the folder because I knew one day this would make a hell of a PowerPoint if it ever went to court. That afternoon, I submitted a formal complaint to the county, the California Water Resources Control Board, and the EPA. I included the surveillance footage, the HOA letter, the fake authority jargon, and the internal documents I'd uncovered. My message was simple: Harbor Bluffs HOA has fabricated jurisdiction, falsified claims of environmental oversight, and initiated unauthorized entry onto private land under the guise of public duty. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a deliberate campaign of coercion and overreach. I hit send and felt the first rush of something I hadn't felt in years: momentum. When I got home, I printed duplicates of everything and stored them in a waterproof lockbox in my garage. Then I installed an additional trail cam overlooking the side gate and programmed my security system to notify me of any movement within 5 feet of the pool valve. I also placed a sign on the gate: private property, not subject to HOA jurisdiction. Entry without warrant will be prosecuted. Subtle? No, but necessary. That night, I told Marie everything. Every word of the emails, every motion, every line with my name on it. She listened quietly, a mug of tea trembling slightly in her hands. "They're not going to stop," she said finally. "No," I said, "they're not." But neither was I. It was 4 days after I filed the complaints. I spent most of those days on the phone with attorneys, journalists I still knew from my old cases, and a retired water board official who remembered Karen Bates from a previous HOA scandal involving forged meter readings and mysteriously inflated drought credits. I was building leverage, quietly, methodically, the kind that sits in a folder until the moment it detonates in a courtroom. But on Thursday, the fight stopped being paperwork. It was just after noon. Marie was inside prepping lunch. I was out back, patching a rust spot on the pool ladder when the gate buzzer went off. Not the doorbell, not the front drive sensor, the side gate, the one they'd already breached once before. I dried my hands, slipped on my vest cam, and headed out back. They were already on the property. 3 men in khaki work shirts and steel-toe boots. One of them carried a black satchel. Another had a wrench holstered like a sidearm. And leading the charge, of course, was Karen Bates, now in a navy blue polo embroidered with an HOA insignia, her hair tucked neatly under a sun hat like she was leading a prayer group to war. I stood between them and the valve. "You're trespassing," I said flatly. Karen smiled, the kind of smile that makes you want to replace all your locks. "We have authorization from the Canyon Lake Drainage Subcommittee. The pool must remain drained pending review. Any refilling during this window may constitute a public safety hazard under Ordinance 720. "Show me the ordinance," I said. She opened her binder and held up a single sheet, a black and white photocopy with a faded county header and nothing resembling a signature or seal. "Where's the order?" I asked. "Where's the badge? Where's the officer?" "We're acting under cooperative authority," she snapped. "That gives us oversight under emergency provisions, especially when the property owner is suspected of non-compliance." That's when Marie stepped out onto the porch. No words, just her, in a hoodie, holding the compact trauma pistol I'd bought for her after the first incident. The safety was on. Her finger wasn't near the trigger, but she held it like someone who knew where the line was and what happened when someone crossed it. One of the men raised his hands instinctively. Karen didn't blink. "Is that a threat?" she asked. "No," I said, keeping my tone measured. "That's a private citizen reminding you that you're on private land without cause, and you've already damaged property once this month." Karen took a step forward. "We're within our rights." "Are you?" I asked, and clicked a remote on my keychain. The backyard siren howled to life, 120 decibels of shrieking metal, enough to make your skull vibrate. It lasted 5 seconds, just long enough for the security system to capture their reactions. I pulled my phone out and dialed the sheriff. "Trespassers at 102 Lakeview. 3 males, 1 female. Unauthorized access. Prior incident on file. Cameras recording. Send someone." Karen, to her credit, tried to save face. She marched forward, reached toward the pool valve like she had divine right. One of her goons followed, toolbox already half open, but I was faster. I stepped between them, caught the guy's shoulder mid-lunge, and shoved. He stumbled back, lost his footing, and fell straight into the dry pool. His buddy tried to grab him, slipped too, and the pair of them landed in a heap of profanity and groans. Karen screamed something about assault. I didn't touch her. Didn't need to. The camera on my vest had everything. The entry, the attempted sabotage, the moment her inspectors climbed over my warning signs like rats with clipboards. The sheriff arrived 12 minutes later. Deputy Fisher, tall guy, clean cut, who remembered me from a property fraud bust I helped with 2 years back. He looked at the scene. 2 dazed men in the pool, 1 angry HOA queen yelling about water rights, and me with my arms folded, calm as a Buddha. Karen pointed at me like I was a war criminal. "He assaulted us." He pushed my inspectors into a hazardous structure and interfered with a federal review. Fisher raised an eyebrow. "Do you have ID for your inspectors?" Karen hesitated. "They're contracted." By whom? By the HOA. Under Drainage Oversight Code, he glanced at me. Is this the same HOA that's not supposed to have jurisdiction over your lot? Same one. I handed him the envelope, the one with the maps, the emails, and the footage timestamps. Karen's voice cracked. He's interfering with an investigation. Fisher flipped through the documents. This doesn't look like an investigation. Looks like trespass and tampering. Karen's expression started to twist. Not into fear, not yet, but into something tighter, something like realization that she'd miscalculated, that the game had rules, and for once she wasn't the one holding the rule book. I'll need statements from all of you, Fisher said finally. And you, he pointed at Karen, might want to call your legal rep. They left after 20 long minutes, climbing back into their branded HOA SUV like a retreating militia. I watched them drive off through my front gate, the one with the new sign I'd put up that morning. Unauthorized entry will result in civil and criminal prosecution. Camera live. Trespassers get wet. Not witty, but true enough. That night, I uploaded all the footage to 3 cloud servers and a backup drive in my safe, because I knew they weren't done. But neither was I. By the following afternoon, I had a voicemail from a law firm I'd never heard of, Goldman & Weiss LLP, out of Temecula. The message was terse and almost bored in tone. Mr. Maddox, we represent the Harbor Bluffs Homeowners Association. Our client is prepared to pursue civil action in light of the altercation on your property. Please respond promptly. It didn't take long to confirm they were real. Boutique HOA specialists with a reputation for bullying settlement agreements out of elderly homeowners who just wanted to paint their shutters blue. Their homepage boasted experience in compliance enforcement, municipal zoning, and waterway regulatory conflicts, which basically translates to, we send scary letters for people like Karen. I called them back. Goldman & Weiss, the receptionist chirped. How can I direct your call? Put me through to whoever had the poor judgment to threaten a retired government investigator without reviewing county maps first. Silence. Then, one moment please. After a few seconds, a slick voice came on. Male. Probably wearing suspenders. Mr. Maddox, this is Daniel Weiss. I believe we left a message regarding your conduct during a water rights inspection. Let me save you some trouble, Mr. Weiss, I said. I have footage of your client's inspectors entering private land without authorization, attempting to tamper with regulated equipment, and being warned repeatedly before falling into a dry recreational structure. The county has no jurisdictional claim. The EPA has been notified of falsified HOA documentation, and I've filed complaints with the state board over impersonation of officials. There was a long pause. I see. No, you don't. Not yet, I said. I'll be filing a motion for a cease and desist by end of week. You might want to prepare your client for a countersuit, trespass, property damage, harassment, and impersonation. And if that's not enough to get you moving, I'm fairly certain my friends at the Desert Sun would love a copy of the HOA's emails. You know, the ones where Ms. Bates calls me a, quote, irresponsible male hazard to environmental norms. He cleared his throat. That may not have been authorized communication. Neither was draining my pool. I hung up before he could backpedal. I didn't need to listen to a man defend a woman he hadn't even met in person, not when I already knew the strategy. Stall, deflect, settle quietly. They'd picked the wrong retiree. That weekend, I had company. 2 of my old colleagues, Frank Delaney and Cynthia Rios, both ex-investigators, both semi-retired but still sharp as cut glass. They brought coffee, beer, and a portable printer. We turned my garage into a command post. Frank dug into HOA financials, public records, expense filings, ballot initiatives. Cynthia requested Karen's record of complaints and filings from the county clerk. And then we found it, the receipts. Over the past 8 months, the Harbor Bluffs HOA had approved over $60,000 in contractor fees under vague line items like environmental compliance patrols and proactive perimeter enforcement. Payments made to a shell LLC called Bluff Safe Services, registered to, wait for it, Karen Bates' cousin in San Bernardino. Not a licensed inspector, not a government subcontractor, just some meathead with a vest and a water wrench, paid out of HOA dues to harass properties outside the HOA boundary. It got better. Cynthia uncovered an internal HOA memo from the last quarterly meeting. In it, Karen floated the idea of expanding HOA jurisdiction over adjacent zones to ensure safety during drought season. No vote, just a statement. But two board members had left handwritten notes in the margins. One simply said, "Bad idea," the other, "This could blow back." Guess what? It just did. By Sunday, I'd compiled a new report titled Operation Bluff Overreach. It included the unauthorized expansion attempts, the financial abuse of member dues, and the use of fake inspectors for coercion. Frank helped me draft a complaint to the California Department of Consumer Affairs, citing fraudulent misrepresentation, misuse of association funds, and unlicensed security enforcement. I also wrote a personal letter to every homeowner in Harbor Bluffs, enclosing copies of the financial records and a list of questions. Did you vote to fund this? Did you approve property invasions? Did you know you were paying for fake investigators to provoke lawsuits? I sent 57 envelopes, certified. Karen wanted escalation. She was about to get it. By Monday morning, the backlash had teeth. I woke up to find 3 emails from homeowners in Harbor Bluffs. The first was a cautious thank you, phrased like the sender was worried their inbox was being monitored. The second was a request for a phone call, not over email. And the third came from someone named Susan Tran, a former HOA board member, and it was explosive. She wrote that she'd resigned quietly 6 months ago after repeated disagreements with Karen. According to her, Karen had been consolidating control over the board for over a year, marginalizing dissenters, delaying votes, and invoking emergency procedures for everything from pest control to water surveillance. When Susan questioned why the HOA was suddenly spending thousands on compliance sweeps, Karen shut her out of meetings and told other board members she was emotionally unstable. The kicker: Susan confirmed that Bluff Safe, the so-called inspection team, was never formally approved. Karen had authorized the payments through an emergency administrative action, bypassing board approval by declaring the situation a public safety concern. I called her. She answered on the first ring. "Ms. Tran, Gavin Maddox. I figured you'd be calling. Is it true about the votes?" She didn't hesitate. "Absolutely. I begged them to hold a formal session, but she just pushed everything through. People were afraid of her. She controls the agenda, the minutes, the legal team. Anyone who pushes back ends up fined or, like me, pushed out." We talked for over an hour. By the end, I had her statement. Not notarized, not yet, but she promised to send a signed affidavit within the week. She also offered to connect me with another former board member who'd left after Karen authorized a $7,200 landscaping project on shared soil, which turned out to be her own backyard. The dominoes were wobbling, but Karen wasn't done. That afternoon, I got a visit, not from the police, not from lawyers, from the Code Enforcement Office. 2 county agents in tucked-in polos and clipboards showed up at my gate and said they had a complaint about non-compliant barrier fencing surrounding a recreational water structure. I nearly laughed in their faces. "You're kidding," I said. "What, the gate's too friendly looking?" One of them, Rodriguez, I think his name was, kept a straight face. "The report says your fencing is insufficient for a pool near a residential boundary and may pose a public safety risk under Section 104.23. I showed them my fence, 8 feet of solid steel topped with security caps and compliant with both state and municipal code. I had the permit on hand, laminated and dated. They reviewed it, took pictures, said they'd file their findings. Before they left, I asked who submitted the complaint. Rodriguez shrugged. "Anonymous tip." Sure it was. That night, I got my own tip from a friend at the sheriff's department. He told me, off the record, that Karen had made several calls that week expressing concern about my volatile behavior and possible mental health instability. She was trying to paint me as unhinged, dangerous, a man on the edge. Classic HOA playbook. Attack the reputation when you lose the argument. But I'd played this game before, and I wasn't about to let her shift the narrative. I spent that evening writing a statement, a public one. I sent it to every HOA member again, posted it on the community forum, which Karen had suspiciously taken offline for maintenance the day after my last message, and uploaded it to a personal blog I made just for this. I laid everything out. The illegal expansion, the private contractors, the misuse of funds, the forged orders, and now the personal attacks and weaponized complaints. I ended the post with a simple line. When power is abused by those who claim to serve the community, it is not just the homeowner's right to resist, it's their obligation. It went semi-viral. Well, semi-viral for a HOA fight in Canyon Lake. Dozens of comments rolled in from other neighborhoods, former board members, legal aides, even a retired HOA arbitrator who offered free advice. Karen wanted war. She just got one. By midweek, I could smell the fear in the air. Not mine, theirs. The community wasn't just grumbling anymore, it was boiling. 3 more homeowners reached out, 2 anonymously, 1 with full name, address, and receipts of their own. One woman, Deborah L., sent me a PDF copy of her latest HOA fine, $450 for excessive garage clutter, visible from street view. The funny thing, she didn't even have windows facing the street, just cameras, installed by BluffSafe. That was the thread that began to unravel it all. Turns out Karen had authorized 9 surveillance cameras around Harbor Bluffs, not on community buildings, on residential homes, mounted low, just under the eaves, disguised as weather sensors, installed under the pretense of monitoring water use and security enforcement. I forwarded this to a friend of mine in data privacy law. He damn near choked on his lunch. That's a violation of both California Civil Code and the Federal Wiretap Act if any audio was captured, he said. Depending on how they were installed, she could be staring down felony charges. He agreed to take it further, pro bono no less. Said it wasn't about the HOA, it was about precedent. And Karen was about to become case study number 1. Meanwhile, the HOA board, the part that wasn't already hollowed out, began to fracture. Susan Tran connected me with another member, Daniel Eng, who admitted he'd been pushed into silence after Karen threatened to audit his landscaping invoices if he didn't vote yes on enforcement expansions. She always spoke like she had backup, he told me. Like someone higher up was feeding her legal coverage. But after your post went out, I started getting emails from other neighborhoods. Turns out, nobody sanctioned what she did. Eng agreed to meet with me. Off-site, neutral territory, a diner just outside the development where nobody from Karen's kingdom would walk in by accident. He handed over copies of the last 3 months of board meeting minutes. None of them included the aggressive enforcement initiatives. Not one word about BluffSafe or my property. She's been keeping her own version of the minutes, he said. What gets filed officially is sanitized. You think she drained your pool by accident? She told us you were building a commercial water feature for profit. Claimed it was preemptive environmental mitigation. We knew it was bogus, but nobody wanted to challenge her. And that's when I knew. The internal fracture was fatal. Karen didn't just break the rules. She invented new ones, lied about enforcement, falsified orders, and used her cousin's company to run roughshod over anyone who questioned her. I called my attorney. It's time. We filed 2 motions that same day. A civil suit against Harbor Bluffs HOA, naming Karen personally for overreach, trespass, defamation, and invasion of privacy, and a request for a temporary restraining order, barring Karen and any BluffSafe affiliate from coming within 100 feet of my property. The judge scheduled a hearing in 72 hours. That night, something happened that made it all feel very real. Someone threw a rock through my front window. No note, no warning, just a clean break. Tempered glass shattered across the floor like an exclamation mark. Marie screamed. I hit the security feed. Nothing but a shadow in a hoodie running back toward Lakeview Road. I didn't call the police. I called the press. The next morning, a local reporter from the Californian met me in the driveway. I told him everything, showed him the rock, the cameras, the documents, the emails, even the drone footage we'd captured of BluffSafe entering my property uninvited. He left with a full folder and a look in his eye like he just found the front page. Karen's little HOA empire was starting to collapse, and the only thing left to decide was whether it would burn quietly or explode in court. 3 days later, I walked into Riverside County Superior Court with 2 things: a meticulously prepared case file and 0 intention of settling. Marie came with me, calm but coiled tight like a spring. Susan Tran sat beside us in the hallway, holding her affidavit in both hands like a weapon forged from pure bureaucratic rage. Our attorney, Chris Landon, sharp, unshaven, and furious in that soft-spoken way good lawyers tend to be, reviewed our binder one last time while sipping from a travel mug that said, "I love due process." Karen arrived 12 minutes late, wearing a tailored blazer and oversized sunglasses like she was walking into a casting call for Real Housewives, Federal Court Edition. Behind her, a junior associate from Goldman & Weiss, barely out of law school, lugging a briefcase like it contained secrets of state. The courtroom was half full. reporters in the back row, a few homeowners near the aisle, and 2 off-duty HOA board members who clearly wanted to be seen watching this unfold. Judge Meredith Cho took the bench right on time, and from the second she looked over the preliminary filings, I could tell she wasn't in the mood for theater. The hearing started with the restraining order. Landon presented video footage of the unauthorized entry, the valve tampering, the fraudulent order Karen waved like a badge. He played the audio of her phone call where she cited a federal review that didn't exist. Then came the security camera clips, one after another, clearly showing bluff-safe staff trespassing, attempting to access the pool valve again and falling into the dry pool after ignoring multiple verbal warnings. Karen's lawyer objected on grounds of selective context. Judge Cho raised an eyebrow. "Is that your legal term for security footage?" He sat down. When Karen took the stand, voluntarily, I might add, she opened with bravado, spoke about drought risk, cooperative water zones, and the necessity of proactive oversight in the absence of public responsiveness. Landon let her run. Then he handed her a printed copy of her own HOA boundary map. "Can you circle the complainant's property?" She squinted. "It's adjacent to inside or outside the HOA." She hesitated. "Technically outside." "Thank you." "And did the board vote to extend HOA jurisdiction into the complainant's property?" "There was a discussion." "No vote." "No formal vote." "And the inspectors you brought, were they licensed by any city or state agency?" "They were contractors." "Were they bonded?" "I don't believe so." "Were they trained in water compliance law?" "They were instructed." "By whom?" "Me." There was a pause so thick you could have sliced it with a court summons. Landon turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we request the full restraining order, plus immediate consideration for damages resulting from unauthorized enforcement, defamation, and misuse of public perception for private gain." Karen's lawyer tried to object, but at that point, it was like watching a toddler throw paper towels at a wildfire. Judge Cho didn't even deliberate. She ruled on the spot. Temporary restraining order granted. HOA to immediately cease all contact with the complainant. Preliminary approval for a civil case to proceed to discovery. Karen sat motionless. I saw her fingers twitch just once. The tiniest break in composure. Her phone buzzed in her purse. She didn't check it. Maybe she already knew. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. I gave one statement. This was never about a pool. It was about a lie so bold, so brazen that people stopped questioning it. Well, I did. And I'll keep doing it until every homeowner she bullied gets their say. That quote ended up in 2 local papers, one HOA newsletter, anonymously of course, and a Reddit thread that called me the HOA exterminator. But what mattered more was what came next. Landon filed a formal subpoena for HOA financial records. The county opened an ethics investigation, and Karen Bates. She was about to meet the part of the system even scarier than me, the auditor's office. I'd seen bureaucracies implode before, but never from the comfort of my own kitchen. The morning after the court hearing, I was having coffee on the back patio when a white county SUV pulled up across the street. 2 men in button-downs stepped out. One carried a laptop case, the other a large envelope. They didn't even glance at my house. They walked straight into the Harbor Bluffs HOA clubhouse, escorted by a visibly sweating board member who looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. Turns out, the county auditor's office doesn't knock. It just walks in with an inspection order and a digital warrant. By noon, I'd received an anonymous tip, probably Daniel Ung, that Karen had been suspended as HOA president pending legal review. The board issued a 1-paragraph statement on their website claiming temporary administrative restructuring and external financial evaluation for transparency. It was the kind of language that says we're panicking, but our lawyer told us to keep smiling. That same day, I got a visit from Susan again. She brought cookies, but more importantly, she brought records. Old copies of HOA meeting transcripts that had mysteriously vanished from the official archives. In them, proof that Karen had been inflating budgets, rerouting repair funds, and funneling legal contingency payments to her cousin's company long before the Bluff Safe drama began. And then, the best part. One of the homeowners, an elderly widow named Gladys, came to my house with a manila folder. She'd been fined twice by Karen for non-compliant gutter color and decorative lawn negligence. Inside the folder were canceled checks for those fines, made out directly to a non-HOA account in Karen's name. Game, set, prison. I passed the whole batch to Landon, who practically purred with satisfaction. We'll update the civil filing and submit criminal referrals to both the DA and the Department of Consumer Affairs. It didn't take long. Within 72 hours, the Riverside County District Attorney issued a formal investigation notice, followed by a freeze on the HOA's discretionary accounts. A full audit was scheduled, homeowners were notified. A town hall was called, the first open meeting in over 8 months. They held it at the community center. I went. People looked at me differently now. Not like a stranger, not like the guy with the weird Olympic pool. Like the guy who finally stood up to a dictatorship wearing tennis shoes and a clipboard. Daniel Ung opened the meeting, hands visibly trembling as he read a list of updates. Karen's suspension, the pending legal inquiries, the recommendation to dissolve the current board and hold emergency elections. Then someone asked the obvious, "Where's Karen?" Nobody answered. But the next day, I found out. She tried to resign quietly and skip town, a spiritual sabbatical according to the email she sent to the remaining board. But the DA filed charges before she could pack her second suitcase. They picked her up at a rental property in Palm Springs, charged with forgery, wire fraud, embezzlement, trespassing, criminal impersonation, and abuse of authority. 10 felony counts. No plea bargain. The news hit local outlets like lightning. HOA president arrested in fraud scheme targeting homeowners. My name was mentioned 5 times in the article, twice with the word whistleblower. I didn't smile. I grinned. A week later, Landon called. The board folded, he said. They're offering full settlement, $900,000 sealed if you accept confidentiality. But I think we can push for more, plus court costs. I told him I'd think about it. And I meant it. But that wasn't the end, because the real prize wasn't money. It was what came next. 3 weeks later, the pool was full again, crystal clear and perfectly still. It wasn't just water, it was closure. It shimmered under the sun like a mirror, reflecting the sky, the roofline, and the new 10-foot steel fence that now surrounded the property like a fortress. You couldn't even see the water from the street anymore. That was the point. I didn't install the fence out of fear. I did it out of principle, because some lines aren't meant to be crossed, especially not by clipboard tyrants who think a zip code grants them divine authority. The new gate was solid, reinforced, welded in black with a keypad lock, motion sensors, and one final touch that made Marie snort coffee when she saw it the first time, a custom aluminum sign bolted to the front. It read, "Private Federal Observer, this is not HOA territory. You trespass, you fall in." We laughed, but it wasn't really a joke. Karen Bates had been denied bail. The DA was pushing for a full sentence, and the press was following the case like it was reality TV. Every week brought another headline. More residents speak out about HOA abuse. Audit reveals thousands misused under Bates. Attorney General launches HOA reform task force. Meanwhile, my name was showing up in articles, blog posts, even HOA. Forms from other states. A guy from Arizona emailed to ask how to get access to public audit forms. A couple in Nevada said they used my story to confront their HOA about illegal voting procedures. I didn't intend to become a symbol, but I'd take it. The civil settlement came through exactly 32 days after the court hearing. $900,000 in damages, plus full legal fees, and a sealed letter of formal apology from the Harbor Bluffs Board. They begged for confidentiality. I agreed, on paper. But I never signed an NDA with the public. Marie and I took a vacation. Not far, just up the coast to Monterey. We didn't talk about court or property lines or drainage valves. We just walked, ate, watched waves, and remembered what peace felt like. Sometimes victory doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it's the sound of silence where chaos used to live. When we returned, the HOA office across the street had been boarded up. Not temporarily, permanently. The door was padlocked, the windows empty. Someone, I don't know who, had spray painted a phrase across the siding in big red letters. Drain no more. I didn't touch it. Let it stay. It wasn't graffiti. It was history. That evening, as the sun began to set and the pool lights came on, I poured myself a whiskey, sat on the deck, and watched the water ripple in the breeze. Marie joined me a few minutes later with her feet bare and a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. We didn't say much, because there was nothing left to say. I'd stood my ground, fought with facts, not fists. tore down a paper empire one receipt at a time, and reminded the HOA and anyone like them that ownership isn't about paperwork. It's about standing between what's yours and the ones who think they can take it without asking.